So we're going to talk about multiplying fractions, and we're going to skip straight to sign fractions because generally multiplying's easier than adding and subtracting. So both groups are going to go straight to doing this with negatives. So I have two examples first with just positive numbers, and then I have straight to the example with negative numbers. So we're going to go over this today. You are just taking notes on your own. So as I do a problem, just write down every step along the way, and then we will then we'll check that at the beginning of class. So let's go ahead and start with this one. Now, let me just show you just the simplest way, then I'll show you a way that's easier for a lot of fractions. So I'll make sure I do both ways. So we have 3/5 times 2/3. Multiplying is much easier because with multiplying, you don't have to find a common denominator. You just multiply straight across. So with multiplying, and I'm actually going to put this as step 3, but in some fractions it's step 1, and you'll see why in a second. But you multiply across. Top times top, bottom times bottom. You multiply across. So this one is sort of the simplest form of a fraction. You do 3 times 2 is 6, 5 times 3 is 15. And then you always, if a fraction simplifies, we'll put that as step 4, always simplify. So let me go write that down. So multiply across and simplify. And this one, that's all we had to do. There weren't the other steps. What goes into 6 and 15? Well, let's see. 3 goes into both, so we'll divide both by 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2. 15 divided by 3 is 5. 2/5 is the simplest form. There's one extra step we could have done, and I didn't want to show it at first because I wanted to show you sort of the simplest way with the fewest steps. But there's one extra step that actually sometimes makes it easier, even though it adds another step, and that's cross reducing or cross simplifying. I'm just going to put cross reduce. A lot of people will say cross multiply. This is not cross multiplying. At some point, some people heard that. It's completely different. Cross multiplying is something you do with proportions. Not this. This is cross reducing. And here's the way it works. We take our fraction, and once, just to make sure you understand, this way of doing it that we've already done, it got us the right answer. That when I say this is the simplest way to do it, it's right. What cross reducing means is like here I waited to the end and I reduced my fraction by dividing by 3. And then I got 2/5. We can actually divide by this 3 before we multiply. And what that does is it makes our numbers smaller. So if you have a couple fractions with really big numbers, it makes it easier because your numbers are smaller, you reduce before you multiply, and you're not as likely to make a mistake with the multiplication. Here's how it works. If I see anything that goes into here and here, or here and here, then I can divide that out. That's cross reducing. So it's easy to see that something goes into 3 and 3. 3 does. If I'm going to divide 3 by 3, I get 1. This 3 by 3, I get 1. That's cross reducing. Now, when I multiply 1 times 2, it's 2. 5 times 1 is 5. And we get that 2/5 that we got before. So from now on, you're going to see me cross reducing. But just know if that's something, it's something worth practicing because it makes it easier. But if you really don't get it, you really don't have to. We got the answer without doing that too. All right, let's go ahead and do this one. The one extra step, this way you can see it. The one extra step on some fractions is you have to put them in what we call fraction form. So those would be the 4 steps. Everything has to be a fraction. So if you have a whole number, you have to make it a fraction. If you have a mixed number, you have to make it an improper fraction. So when we did subtracting, we talked about making these improper. You just start at the bottom, work up, multiply, and add. That would be the first step to any multiplying. You have to make it improper. With addition and subtraction, you didn't have to do that. You found a common denominator. With multiplying, you have to make them improper. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 makes 3. So I'll put 3/2. 5 times 3 is 15, plus 4 makes 19. Be 19/5. And then I always check for step 2, cross reducing, and I can see that nothing goes into 3 and 5. Nothing higher than 1, of course, goes into 2 and 19, so I can't cross-reduce. I'm just going to multiply. 2 times 5 is 10. And then we'll do 19 times 3. And I did this on purpose. It's good to come way away from the work that you're doing here that's nice and organized to do scratch work. Came way away so that I didn't get mixed up and confused. 9 times 3 is 27, 3, 57. And for now, we're just going to leave our fractions as improper fractions. We'll talk about converting later. Nothing wrong with leaving it improper, though, so we'll just leave it just like that. 57/10. Now we get to it with negatives. And I'm only doing 2 problems that way. We'll practice more at some point. For now, just these 2, because it's really not that much more difficult. If you look here, we remember the rules. They're the same as for integers. We know that a negative times a positive is a negative. And since this is a negative and a positive, we know our answer is going to be negative. And now we're going to multiply just like we did up here. The first step, just like before, fraction form. Then we're going to check to see if we can cross-reduce, multiply, then simplify. So in this case, I'm going to even copy without the negative. Since I already know the answer is negative, I'm not going to put it here. You could, but I already know the answer is negative, so that's all I need. To make the 5 into a fraction, I need to think, what would I divide 5 by that would not change it? And that would be 1. 5 divided by 1 is still 5. I'm going to go ahead and put a dot instead of the parentheses. 1/2. Now I'm going to check, does anything go into 1 and 1? No, just 1. So that doesn't help us. Anything 5 and 2? Nope. So now we multiply. 5 times 1 is 5. 2 times 1 is 2. It'd be 5 halves. And if you want to go ahead and practice converting, this is a good one to do with since it's pretty small. We would just put the 5 inside. The denominator always goes outside. 2 goes into 5 2 times, which is 4. We have 1 left over. So 2 is our whole number, -2. The remainder is the new numerator. And when you do these conversions, that 2, that denominator that we had before, doesn't change. It stays there. So -2 and 1/2 would be and both of those answers would be correct. Let's do the last one. I'm kind of running out of room. We'll see if this fits. First thing I'm going to do is check for my sign. So I see I have a negative and a negative. So going back to this triangle, negative times a negative is a positive. So I know I'm going to have a positive answer. And I'm going to go ahead and put that, even though you really don't have to put the positive, just so that I can show you and just so that I remember. Now we know our first step is fraction form. So I'm going to make all this into fractions. Just like that. Multiply, add. 5 times 3 is 15. 15 times plus 1 is 16. So we have 16 over 5. Once again, since I know the answer is positive, I'm not going to copy down this negative just because I know what the sign is already. Otherwise, I would need to do that. 10 times 6 is 60, plus 9 makes 69. I'm going to go ahead and put a times sign when I'm actually working it here, over 10. So now I can see that nothing goes into 5 and 69, because 5 is a prime number, doesn't go into 69. But I can tell that at least 2 goes into 10 and 16, so I'm going to go ahead and divide by 2 to make my number smaller. That'll make the multiplication easier in a second. 2 goes into 10 5 times. 2 goes into 16 8 times. And there are no other common factors at this point. 5 times 5 is 25. 8 times 69. Let's see. Let's just get another sheet of paper. And you can see why I cross-reduced here, because 8 times 69 you can see is much easier to do than 16 times 69. So we cross-reduced to make our numbers much easier to deal with. 2 times 8 is 72. 6 times 8 is 48. Plus 7 should be 55, I believe. So 552. So we have 552 over 25. And we'll just go ahead and leave that improper. I don't believe it reduces past that, because 5 is the only factor of 25 other than 25, and 5 and 25 don't go into 552. So this would be our answer. It's improper. You could convert it like we did here, but we can just leave it like that as well. So write down any questions that you have about this. We may have questions about with the signs, I don't know, and let me know. We'll talk about it with you.